So I think as you all are learning, it's not about the poses in yoga, but for some reason it's become that. And you'll talk about the koshas, which are like the layers, or the realms, the 5 layers, like the physical, the mental, the emotional, blah, blah, blah. And you'll do that Sunday with Stephanie. But meditation is really what it's all about. And it's to prepare and calm us. And the yoga was developed so they could kind of move around and then sit longer in their meditation. But it makes you feel good too. It's one vehicle to connecting. It's one of the 8 limbs. And there's no right or wrong way. It's just a vehicle. And you'll find in the yoga industry, and any industry, sports, whatever, religions, some people stand strong by their beliefs. And I'd like to say just stay really open, because there's no right or wrong way. There's a group of people who think Sanskrit's like the divine language of the God. Hebrew is also. So is Latin, where they have masses in Latin. There are some that say, no, you're going to scare students if you do that, or they're not going to want to come to church. So just kind of stay open. It's interesting to learn the roots and the history of it, and to practice it and educate your students if that's the right environment. So just keep open, but it's going to be hard. I can't control any biases that all the teachers have in the world and in here. I try my best, but the more you meditate, the better everything gets. So I'm just going to talk about some scientific benefits before we meditate tonight, and then what kind of meditation we're going to do. Not a lot of trainings spend a lot of hours on meditation in the yoga training. I don't know why. We're afraid to sit and be alone. But just some of the benefits of meditation, and I gave this talk to a group. It decreases anxiety and depression over time. And there are studies, Harvard's done a few studies on meditation, that it increases the gray matter in the brain of the hippocampus. And I think of like a hippopotamus, their bum gets a little bigger. And then it decreases in the amygdala. What does this mean? Is it you get a little bigger brain power about compassion and generosity, and less of that fight or flight. And when it starts to take effect, it's 8 weeks. About what they studied with, these are MRI studies of 8 weeks, anywhere 10 to 20 minutes a day. And so what you can start with is baby steps, and we can start to kind of go over that. So meditation, like with exercise or eating healthy or flossing your teeth, it's not something you just do and say, okay, I did it, and then I'm gonna not do it anymore. It really does strengthen over time. You start to discipline your mind. There are so many ways to practice yoga, so many ways to become healthy, so many ways to practice meditation. There's no right or wrong. It's what resonates with you in your heart, what works well for you. There are, and I posted this on the Facebook, an interview with Jack Kornfield, and he's somebody I'm going to use tonight. I spread everything out. But there are types of yoga, even there are many ways to escape. You can get really obsessed with it and just escape and not deal with your daily life. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you can go to yoga, go to your power yoga if you think that's the one or whatever, and then go home and not bring it off the mat, or not strengthen. You're skipping the meditation part to bring that generosity and calmness and dealing with life in general. It doesn't make everything all right. What it helps you do is deal with your emotions. And like the weather was today, or like it is any day, it could change like that. It's sunny, it's raining, it's lightning. And the more you sit in meditation and you get to know yourself, your triggers, maybe you wake up and you're feeling depressed. You don't have to analyze, oh, I'm depressed because of this or this. And what we commonly usually want to do is do something, maybe eat or do something to get away from it. We want to push it away. Well, what meditation helps is to just understand this is normal. I'm going to move through it and sit with it. But not identify with it like I'm angry, I'm sad, but I feel angry or I feel sad. And you've got the tools to learn how to breathe. Maybe the chanting resonates with you. There was a time I was chanting more with the Bija mantras that are have like ram ram, have a vibration. That worked well for me in the beginning, or om, whatever it is. Whatever you're going to do, stick with it for a while and get disciplined with it every morning, every afternoon. If you skip one, don't beat yourself up, but just get a rhythm going. Like you are going to walk, you have to walk your dog, you got to brush your teeth, you got to eat. So get that routine going as part of your yoga practice. Another thing that over time that they found, these are rock hard studies, and you'll see them in Time magazine. There's something called default mode network, and this is something new, so I'm looking at my notes that I learned about in my DMN. Decreases default mode network, which is AKA the monkey mind, shining object. That's where we get depressed and we get anxious. What if we worry about what's going to happen, or we're really upset about something that happened and we get hooked and we review it over and over and over in our head. And it's usually, some of it can be passed down from our mothers and grandmothers. Could be when you walk in the house, dishes in the sink. But the meditation helps you stop, take a deep breath, the yoga, let's see what happened here. So whoever was in the house today was busy doing something, or it'll help you get how to talk calmly, how to deal with things. And I've been practicing regularly meditation, and I'll just share my experience. I think I started more on a regular kind of basis maybe about 2010. We didn't do a lot of it in my yoga training at all. It wasn't until I got into massage school that we really started practicing it more. And I would set the timer for 10 minutes and do that. It wasn't regular though, wasn't regular. And my meditation teacher talks about crisis meditation. That's usually the most common, like, I'm so stressed out, I gotta meditate. That's the hardest time to decide when to meditate. And then there are also these myths, like there are with yoga. Oh, I'm horrible, I'm not flexible, or oh, I can't quiet my mind. It's not about stopping your mind. It's about, imagine your monkey mind, the thoughts, the top 10 list, whatever it is, good or bad, that we've been telling ourselves since childhood, or it's been passed on from family members, whatever. But imagine like a river, you just watch them. And you can label, there's so many techniques, you can label them, past, future, planning, judging because I'm thinking during meditation. So there are so many different techniques, and I could share them with you tonight, and I'll go in deeper what we're going to do tonight. But the sky's the limit, and we'll also look at in your binder, there's a section on meditation. That's from David G's book, Secrets of Meditation. I don't know if you might want to go ahead and open that and we can read a little bit about it. He's a teacher I resonated with because he's funny and he's not dogmatic. There's no one way that he said this is the way to do it, and that's what I liked about him. And my husband really liked him, and then I got him into it, so now we have a buddy system. So I say, I'm going to meditate now. You want to meditate with me? And we'll sit with the dog and meditate. It doesn't have to be on a deerskin cushion. I just sit on the couch. Sometimes I'm tired, and I do what David G, and G means teacher, that's his stage name, David G. He calls it meditation. Maybe you're really tired and you're going to lay in bed for 10 minutes and watch your breath. That's one thing. Can you find the section on meditation? And I want to make sure everybody has it.
Yeah, it's a little orange tab. This gal right here has some problems.
Yeah, I never had any tabs, so I put my own tabs in.
So do you have a meditation section?
It was right after the chakras. When we did the chakras last time.
I have an extra copy. Here we go.
Just kidding.
So I
This
give,
is the best thing to do. All right.
David, see if you have it. I give him credit for this. He was actually a stockbroker in New York. And then later wasn't the COO for Deepak Chopra for like 8 years. And then he's gone out on his own. But that course really changed my life. And I had been practicing yoga for over 10 years. But through events of running a business, running it with my husband, life gets stressful, and the yoga just wasn't cutting it. And this really helped me get deeper into it. And that's really been helpful. Did you find it? Good. Here, I can use this. So we'll read the first couple paragraphs, and then I'll leave the rest for homework, because there are a lot of things you can play with, lots of assignments. How about, Tori, if you want to read the first sentence in the first paragraph, and we'll just go around the room.
Meditation facilitates the discovery of our inner guru or remover of darkness.
Mm-hmm.
It interrupts the repetition of our customary thought patterns and automated habitual ways of being. In clearing the traffic jam in our heads, the content clouding our vision, the potential for new possibilities seems imminent. Such an act spearheads the transformation from a victim mentality to one of empowerment in which the control lies in our hands. We become rejuvenated with the revelation and that it's not something or someone that can solve our issues or eradicate our inner darkness, but rather the remover of darkness lies within. Meditation awakens the guru within.
Let's unpack that a little bit. So we're going to be doing the third chakra, which is like the power, the solar plexus. You'll be doing more of that with Stephanie Sunday. And so meditation, what he's saying, helps remove the obstacles to our connection of being happy, but it just, here's maybe another way, helps you go with the flow a little bit more. But you are the guru. You're not having to seek out to find balance or that connection. You have your power. Another thing he mentions, I like the spearheading transformation from a victim mentality. That's really common, and the more you meditate, the more you catch yourself like, I'm being such a brat right now, I'm being a victim, I have poverty consciousness right now, I'm complaining, I'm manifesting this little situation here, or things could be pretty dire, but it's just kind of making the best of the situation. You become a little bit more empowered, and it helps you just look at the world as, there's a good quote, I've been watching a lot of these sailing videos, I'd like to learn how to sail, and this woman who had sailed around the world with her husband, this is back in the 70s, but the first thing she said is, nature is indifferent. It is. We don't know, we can't control everything. So this helps you, when you practice, to not fall into victim mode and blame and why me. It just is. We all are going to die. It just is. We are. And so this helps us just deal with that fact and be in the moment. So I'm going to share the story that you liked. Pema Chodron is one that helped. She's a Buddhist monk. You can find her on YouTube. She has a lot of books out there. She really helped me get into meditation. And she tells a story of this woman running from tigers. And she's running from the tigers, and she gets to a cliff, and she slides off the cliff, and she's hanging on some vines, and she looks up, and there are tigers above, and she looks down, there are tigers below, and she looks at the vine, there's a mouse gnawing on the vine, and then she sees a strawberry, and she takes a bite of the strawberry and enjoys it, blah, blah, blah. But the story is tigers above, tigers below. This is the predicament every day, and we're so blessed to be where we are now. We're not in a refugee camp where things could be so much worse, but thinking in that way, but it takes a lot of practice. There's a book called Buddha's Brain. I loaned it out. I don't have it anymore, but that's really neat. It talks about the science behind the brain and how that works with the gray matter, the hippocampus. And there's one thing that really sticks out, and that's negativity is like Velcro. It just sticks, and it can get really big, and we can get just spinning in our head. And positivity, just being positive, is like Teflon. It just whoop, slips off like a. So we want to cultivate that positive, not to be fake, not to pretend like I'm fine, not that, but to be real with it. It really does help to remove the obstacles, and there are the layers as you're going through the chakras. You'll see where those clogs are. And I remember Corinne saying in one of her classes, when you remove something like when you unplug a drain, you don't pull all the hair out and look at it and play with it. You let go of it, let it go. And that's what we're going to deal with tonight. And it doesn't mean either that you become indifferent. As you get deeper into the sutras, there's a lot about non-reaction. It doesn't mean like, oh, I don't care, but it's just observing. You can observe somebody's freak out drama. You can observe your own. You might be freaking out in your head, but you've got that tool with your breath. And notice that, this isn't really true, what's going on. This is an illusion. This is Maya going on in my head. And when you get into the Bhagavad Gita, you'll see a bit more of that with Arjuna and the ego, how that ego plays tricks. So we're going to harness that ego tonight and just get to know it. You can't tie it down and ignore it. You can't sit on it, but you can get to know it and get to know yourself. And that's stronger than any chaturanga or bird of paradise with fancy pose. That doesn't matter. The meditation does. Diana, do you want to read the spiritual benefits?
The spiritual benefits of meditation are those that carry over into every waking moment. Meditation perpetuates an inner stillness less disturbed by the demands and pressures of the 21st century life. It counteracts the tug-of-war effect created by traumas from the past or anxiety about the future by rooting us in the present moment. Such relief creates further openness to new possibilities in the present moment, releasing us from strict adherence to our conditioned responses and choices.
That's huge. The habitual patterns, thoughts, conditioned responses, the triggers, and it's such a relief when you stop doing those and you're not in that victim mode anymore. But it's not easy breezy, and that's why people don't like to meditate. There's a discomfort of being with ourselves. And once you start practicing, you'll get the hang of it. You get over that hump, and it's not that hard anymore. But we have this thing where we want to turn on the radio, or I gotta be doing something. Open the fridge, or when you get in your car, just gotta be doing something. Gotta keep moving. And I see it with students that come in here. That class didn't work for me. Do you have anything more challenging? I need to move. And yoga's not about that. Yes, if you've been sitting at your desk all day, maybe you want to move more. So it depends. You can kind of play with it. You want to read when more
spiritually liberated from the conditions that seem to define us, our titles, status, roles, possessions, etc., we revert to a more organic state of being that is more aware of our connection to our fellow beings, to the planet and the universe. It also cultivates a more intimate sense of union with whatever higher power exists in your concept of the universe.
And then
meditation.
You could just, we'll finish it. Yeah.
Meditation comes in a variety of shapes and forms, each of which strives to deepen one's present moment awareness and sense of unity or oneness with one's unconditioned self and with the rest of the world, as well as the universe.
So let's just read the next two paragraphs, Devlin, under the antidote to stress.
Meditation can help us respond to stress constructively instead of acting out conditioned patterns of response, often characterized by fight or flight. It's the often instinctive reaction to threats to our safety, happiness, or self-esteem. Fighting may manifest as reactive, angry, argumentative behavior, whereas flight may entail emotionally shutting down, withdrawal, or escape into certain addictions.
So we've all been angry and had fight or flight. These are all, we're all same. We're all the same, we're not alone. That's another thing Pema Chodron says is other people are going through this too. Like that helps. We are not alone. And this helps, this may help a little bit. You want to read the last paragraph on the first page, Christina?
Sure. Meditation creates a state of restful awareness, which leads into subsequent waking moments, creating room in our consciousness for multiple interpretations of the scenario, decreasing attachment to previous interpretations, while our need to defend them becomes less urgent. We become more aware of the bigger picture, one's point of view accommodating a more expanded landscape.
Awesome. So what I'm going to leave is the rest are just the benefits of meditation. And your homework for the next month is to cultivate a daily meditation practice. We're going to do several tonight. And if you kind of flip through, there are the secrets of body-mind meditation, secrets of visual meditation. And again, this is from the Secrets of Meditation by David G. This is actually from my training manual. Secrets of sound meditation, secrets of energy meditation, secrets of sensory meditation, experiences during meditation, and so on, and the myths of meditation, and establishing a ritual. And he has something that's really helped me, and I'll just say it in a nutshell. So rise, pee, and meditate before you have your coffee, because it might not happen. So what I do is I rise, I wake up, I scrape my tongue. Elizabeth, the Ayurvedic practitioner, will talk more about tongue scraping. And then I let the dog out, because I know he's like, gotta go out. And then I feed him, and then I sit on the couch. I set my timer for 20 minutes. For me, and what we'll do tonight, I like to just watch my breath, because I feel like if I'm really stressed, I might have a mantra or meditation, or I might chant. But I like to see what's going on up there. What am I dealing with? So that helps me just watching my breath. And then the second time, if you can later in the day, it's tough. 2 minutes even, 1 minute, 16 seconds. You know, any pattern interrupt. He says right after work, RAW, R-A-W. And I'll never forget, when I first got into yoga, I was working for Whole Foods. I was a manager there, and I got to go to this big Yoga Journal conference. It was really neat. And I was watching, I don't remember who it was, this old Swami speak, and he was so wise, and the room was quiet. We were waiting for him to talk, and the first thing he said was, every morning, clear your junk mail. And every evening or afternoon, clear your junk mail again, or balance sheet, whatever that is. So you wipe that slate of energy that you picked up from the day. And then we have lots of negative energy that we picked up from experiences from childhood, or maybe past traumas, or mom and dad issues, whatever. There are a lot. And what I wanted to cut to the chase tonight, that I didn't get to experience any of this until after massage school, really, when I went to the, actually, I was confused about yoga, went to India, and it was just such a different thing. It didn't really resonate with me. What resonated was some of the work I needed to do on myself, and that was at a place called the Esalen Institute. And I continued to do the work when I came back here with a spiritual counselor, and it has been stronger than, that's been my really strong yoga practice. That's what the warrior, that's what they, not the warrior pose, but the Buddhist warrior, the Shambhala warrior, doing that work. And that's scary work, and it's not always pretty.
That's who's going to be joining us, not this weekend, but maybe next time, the Ayurvedic counselor?
Yes.
Okay.
Elizabeth Jensen. She'll
The
be,
spiritual counselor.
no, actually not. But I want to bring somebody on to do, if anybody's heard of Franny Hoffman, is the only one in the area I know that does that work, her one-on-one work, where she can zone in and pick something out that happened at a time in your life you conveniently forgot about. That's been causing some habitual patterns or reactions now. And she's very intuitive in that way. It's amazing. There's another book that kind of talks about that called The Presence Process by Michael Brown, another book I loaned out. But he talks about a lot of our pain and issues, our kind of created drama. That's another good book. He recommends twice a day, 15 minutes a day.
What's his name?
Michael Brown, The Presence Process. And I have some notes here I wanted to share. So I have a book that's been really helpful for me.
It'd be wonderful to get a list of all these great.
Yeah, and I don't want to overwhelm you. You've got,
But if you ever had a chance to like write down some
Yeah.
of the books that you recommend, that would be
absolutely. This is one, A Path with Heart. A Path with Heart. And this is Jack Cornfield. And I'm just going to share some things from it. Each chapter he has a meditation. I loved in the very beginning, he said, if you haven't cried yet, you haven't been doing the work. You got, you know, we got to move this stuff. And it's what I like a little bit about, borrow both Buddhism and yoga, is that there's a little bit more heartfelt. And then we're different. We're from the West. We're dealing with different stuff too. So just working, it's a luxury that we're able to work through our traumas, actually. From this chapter, Taking the Seat. This is chapter 3, Take the Seat. And this has been the most powerful, and this is what we're going to do this evening. He says, when we take the one seat, that's why I have the seats out today, and we'll work on sitting. When we take the one seat in our meditation, we become our own monastery. We create the compassionate space that allows for the arising of all things, sorrows, loneliness, shame, desire, regret, frustration, and happiness. And one thing he says that I really resonated is there are many ways up the mountain, and you can think about this in yoga when somebody says, oh, I like this kind of yoga, or I meditate this way. It's whatever works for you. But he says there are many ways up the mountain, and each of us must choose the practice that feels true to our heart. So whatever, even if you're just reciting chocolate, whatever it is, whatever works for you. These are all, remember that all these practices, everything we're doing in this whole training, and even tonight, they're just vehicles. So there's no one right way. Everybody's different, and what might resonate with you might not resonate with your friend who you're trying to help. So you may not want to meddle, but just do your practice, and they can learn from you and come and ask, or if they have advice. So it's easy when we first start getting into this and we feel so good and we're learning so much, it might not be for everyone. And that the darkness that we sometimes face in our meditation or in life, remember there's a reading by Rumi about every morning we wake with sadness, darkness, blah, blah, blah. Open the door, welcome them all in, because they might be sweeping out for new delight. So the darkness becomes a renewed vitality. So taking the seat in the center of the room, this is what his teacher taught him. So let me start from the beginning. My teacher, Achan Cha, described the commitment of meditation as taking the seat. He said, just go in the room, put a chair in the center, take the seat in the center of the room, open the doors and windows. I won't do that because it's a little breezy tonight. And you will witness all kinds of scenes and actors, all kinds of temptations and stories, everything imaginable. Your only job is to stay in your seat. You will see it all arise and pass, and out of this, wisdom and understanding will come. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So if you are comfortable sitting on the floor, by all means, you can sit on the floor or you can sit in the chair. I'm going to demonstrate, and I'll get us going, and then I'll be watching the clock. If you're going to be sitting in the chair, what I did is I put a blanket behind you, and if you're going to be sitting on the floor, you might want to sit up on a bolster. But the chair, over time, I found that when I sit, we'll be meditating for 20 minutes. Just make sure you're comfortable. Comfort is queen. That's another from David
So we're gonna
G.
be doing this for 20?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I'm gonna try to get you.
Well, I'm just like, do I wanna be in the chair?
Right, so take
That's
a
what
minute
I'm
to play
talking
around, yeah. No matter if you're sitting on the floor, on your knees, in the chair, we'll go through the basic posture things, the butt pulls. Remember those? So you're gonna lean over to the left, pull the right cheek back, lean over to the right, pull the left cheek back, so you're sitting on those sitting bones. Another thing I like to do is make sure I have enough back support. And one thing you can do is put a folded blanket behind you. And at home, I sit on it, I have a big pillow behind me I'll prop on. You can hang onto the sides of the chairs and do a back stretch, lengthen your back, and then sit back so that you're sitting vertically straight, your spine is straight, and you're sitting on your sit bones. Another thing to look out for are that the knees are over the ankles, that you're not doing anything funny. And what's really weird is in meditation, this might happen to you, your nose might itch, crazy. Try to breathe through it, but if it's driving you nuts, by all means, itch it. If you start freaking out, you need to open your eyes. You can do meditation with your eyes open or closed. We'll do it eyes closed tonight, that makes it easier. But just stay with your breath, and I'm gonna ease us into it as well. Let me dim the lights for us as well. But take a moment to fluff your nest. Get as comfortable as you can.
Yeah, no, right.
It's like we're gonna go on a long flight.
That's right. My pillow.
I'll shut this so it doesn't.
I'm like, I spend eternity trying to avoid these kinds of chairs.
Right now.
I'm like, well, that's what I do it for you.
20 minutes in.
I'll turn off the sound machine as well. So, go ahead, get as comfortable as you can, take your seat, and we'll close your eyes. So let your body be seated comfortably in your chair or on your cushion. Take a posture that is stable and erect and connected with the earth. Sit as the Buddha did on his night of enlightenment, with great dignity and centeredness, sensing your capacity to face anything that arises. Let your eyes close and let your attention turn to your breathing. Let your breathing move freely through your body. Let each breath bring a calmness and an ease. As you breathe, sense your capacity to open in the body, heart, and mind. Open your senses, your feelings, your thoughts. Become aware of what feels closed in your body, closed in your heart, closed in your mind. Breathe and make space. Let the space open so that anything may arise. Let the windows of your senses open. Be aware of whatever feelings, images, sounds, and stories show themselves. Notice with interest and ease all that presents itself to you. Continue to feel your steadiness and connectedness to the earth, as if you had taken the one seat in the center of life and to an awareness of its dance. As you sit, Reflect on the benefit of balance and peace in your life. Sense your capacity to rest unshakably as the seasons of life change. All that arises will pass away. Reflect on how joys and sorrows, pleasant events and unpleasant events, individuals, nations, even civilizations, arise and pass away. Take the one seat of a Buddha and rest with a heart of equanimity and compassion in the center of it all. Sit this way, dignified and present, until you hear the sound of the bells. After time, still feeling centered and steady, staying here present with your breath, relaxing your shoulders, observing your breath, observing any thoughts that come to mind, any feelings, just observing the feelings as if you were watching a river. And the thoughts, letting them pass. Always coming back to the anchor of your breath. We'll sit in silence until you hear the sound of the bells. Before we learn the new ones this weekend, which makes sense. So I'll just kind of, you just pick whatever comes out of there and read it out loud.
Right now?
Mm-hmm.
Extended hand to toe pose. Uta asa padam boom.
So she picked a really hard one. Uh-huh.
It's right there.
Uh-huh. So let's break it down. So first of all, extended hand to toe pose. Can you kind of guess what it might look like?
Like this?
And we can stand up and move around. You might have probably did it with Laura. You can do this one laying down, and you can do it standing up. This one's standing up, and I usually use a strap when I teach it. So just first guess. So if it were lying down, what do you remember what lying down is in Sanskrit? Supta. Supta. So this is hand to toe, laying down. Well, I'll just do it without the strap. Supta, lying down. Pada, Supta Pada Gustasana, hand to toe, lying down. You can do different things here. And you can do it standing up. Gustasana. So it's, let me read it out. Utthita is extended. Utthita, hasta is hand. Hasta, pada is foot. And gusta is big toe. So there are many ways you can do this pose. It's actually a standing balance pose. And we should probably warm up our hamstrings first before we break into a hand to toe pose. So let's say I'm just your best friend and you're gonna tell me what to do to warm up. What would be something I might warm up? And let's, what would be something to warm up my legs to get into this pose?
We do a lunge.
Mm-hmm. A lunge? Where would I start if I'm just standing here?
Down pose.
And where, if I'm gonna step back in a lunge, where should I stand on my mat?
Top of the mat.
Right. So I'm gonna be reviewing a whole bunch of stuff to get you used to it. Stand either at the back of your mat, the top of your mat, the front of the mat, the back of the mat. So just, it's like Simon says, basically. So stand at the front of your mat. And here's another one, sometimes you don't know what to do with your hands. You could always do hands on your hips, or just start in mountain pose. So let's just start in mountain pose. Give me 3 cues, just yell them out.
To his lunge or to
Or for mountain pose.
Ground
Root
root,
your feet.
feet, root feet,
Mhm.
right?
Ground, root,
Spread your toes.
I like to say spread my toes.
Spread your toes.
Another thing you can think of is the bottom of the foot. Different ways of saying it. Some people like to say it's like a tripod. There are 3 points or 4 points. It's going to be what resonates with you. Maybe for a few years you say 3, maybe 2. But yeah, when you spread your toes, and that helps with balance. Okay, so we're in mountain. What about
Rotate your thighs.
you can so the femurs. Let's do a little anatomy. The femur bones, or you could say thighs.
Pull it.
Go back so that you're not doing this. Remember the retired military? This is or this. You might want to say lift your chest, because most people round, but what you want to watch out for is too much like this. So that's softening the low ribs. You can get a little too, kind of try to keep it as simple as you can when you're teaching somebody. You just basically want them to stand up straight and find balance. And what you can do is thread, let's say, ground your feet, lift up to the sky or the ceiling. I try to keep religious stuff out. Like I've been in classes, even here, and the teacher says, and lift your arms up to the heavens. And I'm like, oh, I don't. You just gotta be so careful. It's anything, and you're like, oh, why did I say that? I had a teacher in the past who's even said, in the shape of a swastika with your legs. Didn't think about it. It's a Tibetan peace symbol. Yeah. This is why I meditate, because I can deal with these. I know, yeah, and a student, yeah. So you just gotta be so careful. So anyway, on that note, lengthen to the ceiling or to the I'm just throwing it out there, things to think of, yeah.
What not to do.
So we came to the front of our mat because we're gonna take a lunge. How would we go into the lunge?
Take your right foot back.
And this is why in the beginning you are on your mat a lot, because a lot of teachers have trouble getting left and right. So from here, automatically my hip is going towards the spa now. How could you get me to kind of face towards the front?
Square your hips.
And then here's a big one. Is it a lunge with the heel on the floor or off? And that's what you could decide. So let's, if it's grounded, if the heel is grounded and you bend the front left knee, what is this? Already, we're in it. Warrior one. Do you remember that in Sanskrit? Virabhadrasana. Virabhadrasana. And the way I remember, it's a 1. The 1. So I'm going to rattle off a few cues that might help you. Can anybody remember, are the heels aligned in this one? Like front heel to the back heel?
You're off to the side a little bit.
Yeah. So that in this pose, because the hips are facing towards the front of the room, it is a heel-heel alignment. And that's something you'll say over and over, heel, but not everybody can do that. It might be easier for me to take a little further. It depends on your hips. So you could just say, kind of move your hips towards the front of the room. They might not go all the way there, but that's the direction. I know in your book it says take a 45-degree with the back foot. I don't get too nitpicky because maybe somebody can't do that. Because maybe they have plantar fasciitis in the back, but you don't know. But just as long as they're safe. So what would be the big safety here?
Your knee over your ankle.
Yes. And there's a little trick I like that I learned from in my training, is that if I look down and I can just see my big toe, then I'm good. So I'm pushing my knee kind of towards the pinky toe. Can everybody see that? Then that's pretty aligned. Can we kind of look around and see that? So anatomy check-in, what are we stretching here?
Our quadriceps.
Yes. And what's this right here?
Hip flexor.
Hip flexor. And then what attaches, like at the mid-back, lumbar? There's the piriformis is like right around here. The psoas muscle attaches the top of the body to the bottom. So this is an awesome stretch for anyone who who drives a car and sits a lot, for all of us. And it helps loosen and give way for the lumbar, the low back. And then what about if we lift the arms up and we face forward? What is like the mental thing, do you think, that helps with this? Strong. Uh-huh. And we're also, if you hug the legs in towards each other, pull the belly button in and up and the pelvic floor. Remember, Uddiyana Bandha, Mula Bandha, strengthening the core. And this is all that third chakra. And then relax your shoulders away from your ears. And we're also just working the arms here. And the palms are facing towards each other. And let's take 3 deep breaths because we've already been here for like a minute. 1, 2, and 3. And then let's release, just straighten the front. Now, you can just bring your hands on your hips and let's just step it forward to the front of the mat. That's your safety. Like, what do I do next? Step to the front of the mat, put your hands on your hips. Like, what are we going to do next? So that's handy. So we obviously have to do the other side. So these are just things to kind of think about and review. And what I did for a good, I can't even remember when I did my teacher training, but for about 10 years I realized I was reciting the same thing over and over. And then I had my old teacher come in and help with the group last time. And she opened my eyes that not everybody can square their hips to the front of the room. Not everybody can bring their heels out to their wrists. Not everybody can, and I was like, oh, you're so right. And I was saying this because we get in a rut and we say these things. So it's good to just be honest and say, you know what? And watch and look around the room and see maybe who's struggling. And as long as they're safe, it's okay. You don't want to get too nitpicky that they don't want to come back to class because they're like, she picked on me the whole time. But they also want to feel, well, I paid for this class. Can you watch my form? And I actually had a student, I was subbing. I don't know if you were there. And she said, I really like it when the teacher says positive, reassuring things. Because the teacher who you're subbing for does that. And I was like, okay. So the whole time I'm like, good job, everyone. Yeah. But I don't like to go around the room, but this is just my preference, is say, good job so-and-so, good job so-and-so, because I'm afraid I might not mention everybody in the room, or I might forget their name, but it depends, feel it out on your group. So let's do the other side. So sometimes it's easier just to start with the right, like we did. So now we'll start with the other side. So step your left foot back. So how far should you go, do you know? Just kind of as far as you can go. And you can look around the room, you'll know when you bend your front knee, like, I could go a little further. And that's when you can challenge your students, like, you know what, Fred, you can take a little bit of I think you could step a little further. Okay, so, and warrior 1,
The back foot, I forget on this one, do you put the weight on the outside or the?
It's both equally. So you can always get into this pose from here, too, from a wide stance. What they say in your book is turn the back heel in 45 degrees, and then you want to take the basic concepts that we did in mountain pose, and that's grounding. Let's say the pinky, mine is the big toe ball mount and the pinky toe for extra credit, and then that heel is grounded. And then my arch is already, I've got this, like the spine, like the suction cup, and then my hips are activated, my inner thigh, my adductors, they add in, are activated, and my outer hips activated. And I used an example of a bodybuilder in a Shape magazine that said she kind of thinks, and she'll say out loud, when I go to lift a weight, I'll dial in that big toe, dial in the big toe. Do you remember that when I mentioned that? So things that'll help you. So let's do it together. You're going to bend the front knee and align it over the ankle for safety. And then let's see, can you move that knee far enough? And then this is where you can wiggle that foot out if you want a bigger stance there. And then now ground the big toe and the pinky toe. And what that helps with is you're not dropping in on that knee and pronating. You want to more supinate so the arches are strong. And for stability, you can kind of hug into the middle. Now, if you're facing towards the front of the room, you could, a big word is square your hips towards the front of the room, or just face towards the front of the room as much as you can. And then you bring the arms up. If that's comfortable, somebody might have a shoulder injury and they can't lift their arms. Another fun thing, you can use a strap, you can do a shoulder stretch here. So you can switch it up. Here's a common, so this is more of a closed hip pose because we're faced towards the front as opposed to warrior two. We'll go over warrior two as well. See how, now let's just do warrior two. It opens up. You see how you open up your hips. And then the gaze is still towards the front, but the hips are off to the side, kind of at an angle. And then what you want to remind your students still is not letting that front knee drop in. And that's the big one. That's the big safety one. And relax your shoulders and soften. As a warrior, breathing here. And now we'll have to even it out to the other side. So let's straighten the front leg. Let's say you were teaching and you're like, shoot, I forgot to do warrior two on the other side. So let's just spin it around and you can take it. This is the beauty of yoga. You don't have to get off your mat. You can just spin around and face the other way. And you can admit, you know what, I forgot to do the other leg. And then you bend that knee and open up the arms. So you see the difference. And also, the heels naturally shift a bit, so the front heel is more aligned with the back arch, so it's more of a wider stance. So it's a bit, do you see the difference in the warrior one and the warrior two? Mm-hmm. And the hips more open, the back foot's not as turned in. So what typically, and we can just come back up to wide stance and you can jump up, whatever. So that so warrior one's more heel, warrior two is more heel to arch. Those are little subtle difference, but you can still transition from one to the other and just kind of subtly move the feet. Not a big deal. The big thing's the knee safety. Does that make sense? Because your hips are here. Watch when my hips are here, and then when they open up that way. Can you see that? Yeah.
Something that you said that just resonated with me was when we were talking about taking a wider stance. I don't know if I've had other instructors or I just got it in my own head to move this back foot back, but she's like, no, just wiggle the front foot just a little bit forward. I'm like,
You can wiggle it. Yeah, you can wiggle the foot, and you can also do that in lunge. In lunge too.
So yeah, I'm struggling doing this, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That way.
And let's say, so the pose standing, well, she had Utthita. It was Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana. And that's the extended hand to foot. So that's the one you can do lying down or standing up. So if that's a very advanced pose. First, I would just get the students just balancing on one foot. And then I usually use a strap and maybe even the wall, but you could reach down and take 2 fingers to your big toe. And lengthen it out. And see, you can use the strap. What I would have done is warmed up on the floor and used it as, this would be a pinnacle pose. Definitely a pinnacle pose. You could do it in maybe a mixed level, all levels class, and give the option of just maybe just going this far. Maybe you're here, and that's it. That's all levels, or here, all levels. Just do this. You can stay here, or you go to the full pose.
Do you start with it on the foot when you're teaching it with the strap?
I usually bring it
Or after you've already got your
once
knee
I've got it up, but you can do it down.
So
You can
okay.
do this. Look at this. What if you have like a, this is gentle. You can do
Are you
this.
allowed to bend forward if you're actually doing it?
Yeah, has anybody ever done Bikram? They have you hold the whole foot. There are so many poses out there. They have you hold the whole foot and then fold forward in it. So you're like this. So that's another. Yeah, I mean, you're allowed to do anything as long as you're not gonna hurt yourself.
Like I can do it, but I have to bend forward.
Right, and
to do it.
so
Yeah.
would you have somebody
do
go
that.
out?
Right.
Was that considered an
I
okay way, or would you
want
just
to
not?
I get it now. I
Right.
want to see more stay tall, so use a strap. So like
Work
this.
from- yeah, so
See the
work from-
difference from
yeah,
this?
right.
Yeah.
I'll grab your foot instead of.
You got it
So
on.
I can do it.
You can do it.
I just have to
So wait, I
Yeah.
can do
focus on
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah, you have to, it takes a lot of focus. And this isn't a pose I would just jump on my mat and do. I would build up to it, I would do it reclined on my, and another word for, in Sanskrit, anything reclined is supta. Think of like you're gonna have soup, supta. Also, supine is, supine, I think of like you can have soup. Look at that. See, you can do it. So I would have done this lying down first. And then this pose, you can also open it up. You can cross it over. We're not warmed up enough, but it's balance is so good for your hips. Can anybody tell me why it's good to strengthen our hips? It moves you forward. It supports your back. Yeah. And you want to think of stretch and strengthen, stretch and strengthen. So when I'm teaching a class, I want to stretch and strengthen. Unless I have a theme and I want to work on strengthening the upper back, I want to kind of stretch and strengthen everything. And yoga, the beauty of it, you do a lot of that. Unless it's just going to be a relaxing stretch class. That's different. But if it's going to be like all levels, kind of, or a flow, whatever, you're stretching and strengthening everything. So a lot of anatomy, yoga, cueing, and we're going to keep going. So that was, you picked like the hardest one.
Pinnacle pose to start with.
Yeah, we started with the pinnacle pose. And I've gone to classes where they've done that. And I'm like, are you kidding? It's Sunday morning?
You want me to read it out loud?
Yeah.
Warrior 1.
Okay. So we just did that.
Yeah.
Oh. So you want to do it or not? I'm not going to be able to.
Does it say the Sanskrit on
It
that?
does.
Vira.
Oh, you want me to read it?
Virabhadrasana.
Vera, say it again.
Vera. We can
Vera.
all say Vera. And I'm not
Vera.
as Stephanie's had a lot more training with it. But it could be fun if you have a group that's open to it. Virabhadrasana, asana's pose. Virabhadrasana 1. But if you just told a class, let's go into Virabhadrasana 1, so, you know, who's going to understand that? But you could say that's the name of a warrior. It's like using Latin, go to the root. There's more to yoga. Yoga was from India. You could kind of bring a little flavor to it in that way. Depends on your group. You're teaching the group. So Virabhadrasana 1, let me show you how you can get to it from just take a wide stance on your mat. But here's what's going to happen is everybody's going to be facing a different way and you're not going to know which foot to go. So what you want to do is use, like be field dependent, like face the parking lot, face the poppies. So let's all face the poppies. And then what I do when I'm teaching is I'll walk over here and get over here. And then I'm over here. So I can see you, and that's one way to do it. So you can take a wide stance as far as that's comfortable. And I stopped saying hold your arms out about distance of your wrists, because I realize not everybody can do that. Some people might be tighter, and that's okay. You just do what you can. Let's say we're going to do it facing the parking lot first. Can we think of a way we could bring the arms out to the side? Let's see, it's Virabhadrasana 1, isn't it? Let's do hands on hips, because that way, what that does is you kind of have you could use, they feel their hips, like which direction they're facing. So I'll cue the first one how I would cue it in a class. So without doing it, but I'm mirroring you, this is tricky. So I'm going to use the opposite. I'm going to say, so let's turn your left foot towards the parking lot, but it's my right. And then your right foot about 45 degrees, give or take, towards the parking lot. So your hips are going to start facing towards the parking lot. And you see how I'm using the parking lot, not the spa, or towards the front of the room. And then now bend your front knee, so it's aligned over the ankle. You see I'm just repeating the same thing. It's like Simon says, you'll start to get tired of it. You want to find new things. And then you somewhat bring your hips towards the front of the room or towards the parking lot, and ground through your big toe, pinky toe. So you'll find what it is maybe your theme is. Maybe we're doing chakra 3, hug into the midline with those thighs and pull up through your pelvic floor and your belly button, Uddiyana Bandha, in and up. And then the arms float up. You can use some poetry. And relax your shoulders and find a focal point, a drishti, and breathe like the strong warrior you are. So this is warrior one. We'll take a few breaths here. And then let's say we're going to transition. So you could bring your hands back down to your hips. That's the safe one. Turn your toes back to the poppies. And then now what? We just spin on your heels. Right foot towards the spa or reception, whatever you want to use, or the blue painting, and then bending the right knee. So what's a cue to make sure that their knee is over the ankle?
Besides saying over the ankle?
So that
Right.
you see your big toe.
Right,
Yeah.
because they don't, you can't see, but we can. We have the eagle view, because hopefully I'm looking. So that's one. You can get really detailed. Let's say you've had the group for a while, or you feel comfortable saying rotate your inner right thigh out. Raise the arms up. So the back left thigh is rotating in, the front thigh out. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So you feel in, out. So it's going to be like in,
Say that again, say it again.
out. I'll come demonstrate it. So it's going to feel like this is rotating in, and that's rotating out. So this is back thigh internally, externally. You feel that? Externally, internally. So bring your hands to your hips and just step to the front of your mat. That was pretty risky that I went around and touched you, because in these days some people don't like to be touched. Stephanie touches her students a lot. I do, but I usually don't manhandle like I did. But if I were going to demonstrate it, I could always use a strap if somebody didn't get it. Like, externally rotate here. I could, but you could use that. So that knee's going that way. So this thigh is externally rotating. This one's internally.
I've seen instructors do it in the front and just go, do on their own leg.
Yeah,
Give us
Do
a
it.
visual.
exactly. Yeah. So different ways to kind of think about it. So what are we strengthening? And there's a whole lot going on in that pose. Your feet, your arches, your ankles, because if these are weak, you're strengthening the knees. Because if this, look at my knees now, look at knock knee. Can you imagine over time my knees? And this actually happened with my father. He's a bit pigeon-toed. His femurs were scraping there's like a bowl that they go in, the acetabulum. Over time, they start getting worn down. So we want to strengthen the feet, strengthen the inner thighs. And these are ways, and I would even do this in a gentle yoga class, warrior one, warrior two, really strong poses that are beneficial to the hips and the legs. So the quadriceps, does anybody remember? You probably remember all four of them.
No.
They're and names will give it away, like rectus femoris, like it's erex, IT band. You can kind of be just be aware, and we'll look at the little map of the guy again in his legs. Let's do a few more. How are we feeling?
It's helping.
Balancing poses. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah,
Toes.
oh yeah, that one I had the title in there. This is the hardest. The
Vrikshasana.
And it's a VRK.
Vrikshasana.
So it's that's the way it's pronounced. Vrikshasana.
Shasana.
Vrikshasana. Vrikshasana.
Shasana.
And what you'll find are there's some poses you can say and then you don't want to risk it. Vrikshasana. Vrikshasana. And if you remember what I said at the beginning, that in Catholicism some believe Latin is like the magic, and they have mass just in Latin and Hebrew, And there are hardcore that feel like, well, it's helpful to say it, but if you're confident in saying it, but you can still be a wonderful teacher, and maybe it does help, maybe it does, I don't know, but just be open. But don't feel that you have to have all the anatomy and all of it. You have a whole life ahead of you to learn all this, and it takes time. And you'll be reviewing these over and over with Stephanie. They're fun to learn, doesn't hurt, but again, just keep open with it. So let's go back to, what are the benefits of tree pose? Balance. And again, the feet, the ankles, strengthens the adductors. So let's, there are different ways you can play with this pose. You start again from mountain pose. Do y'all remember the Sanskrit for mountain pose? Yeah.
Tadasana.
That one's kind of like, ta-da. Yeah. So
It's the only one I can
a lot of people, I'm not one of them, but a lot of people like to go off their mat. I like it on the mat because I like to squish my toes in it. It's fun to do at the beach. You can get your foot down in it. So it's whatever's comfortable for you. But whenever we come into this, everybody's like gets competitive, and they're like, okay, here we go. Same cues as Tadasana or mountain pose. You really want to push spreading the toes now, because you need those suckers for balance, don't you? Let's just start with the kickstand little pose, and this is great to just start out and see how the big toe and the pinky toe are really active as you sway. Can you feel that? I'm kind of swaying a lot tonight. Yeah. And just stay with the breath. And what's a helpful cue for balance? Yes. Find a drishti. And I usually get out of the way of the students so they're not all staring at me. So you can bring this foot up a little higher to the calf. Does anybody remember what this little bump is in the calf? Gastrocs in the back. Gastrocnemius and the soleus here. So cue, I'm gonna, I was gonna try to mime it, but the cue of with the foot and the leg. I'm gonna do charades. Hug to the
heart? Or
to the
center?
midline.
To the midline?
Midline. Hug to the midline, or could be even easier, press your standing leg into the foot and the foot into the standing leg. So that you see how that makes a difference? Hug to the midline, or press the standing foot into the, and press them in together. You could say, squeeze the Charmin, depending on your group. Now, if you bring the foot higher, it's really hard in yoga pants, pretty slippery. I'm going to show you a really neat therapeutic practice that I learned from a guy, Doug Keller, that I really like, because I'm a little weaker, I tend to stand funny, and I like to strengthen my adductors. So rather than doing the thigh master, this is one way you can do it. You can actually take the foot and do that way. But the practice that I like to do, standing leg, find a wall space, and bring your left hip towards the wall and just touch the wall. We're going to balance on the right leg. Now, if you need to, get close enough to the wall that your knee can touch the wall. I'm going to take my left heel and hike it up into my inner right thigh, my adductor there. And then keep my toes facing as forward as I can. Put my left knee on the wall and press as hard as I can with my right thigh to hold that knee on the wall. Can you feel that? Yeah, it feels good.
Do you want your foot into your leg like you would for the tree pose?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is tree pose that we're doing. You might have to hike it up there and hold it. That's okay. And then you can go from here. So really press that thigh into the heel. Can you feel that? Yeah. Yeah. Are we on the same page? So you might have to hold it there in the beginning. If you can't do there, then just lower it down. But don't put it right on the knee, because that's a lot of pressure on the knee.
So you're resting the knee on the wall.
Yeah, yeah. And then you're really activating that inner right thigh to hold the knee there. Can you feel that? And then you can see if you can somewhat square to the front and do your tree, or maybe you bring your arms up. But you start to see where, and what was that right side that was hurting? You know, whatever's hurting is usually needs to be strengthened a bit. For a long time, I had a really tight left inner thigh, but I realized, I gotta strengthen it. So try that on the other side and see if there's a difference. There usually is an imbalance.
Yeah, this one's easier.
Yeah, and the other one almost doesn't want to cooperate at all.
That's right.
Yeah, the left one was just a big battle. The right one was, I could see me getting to that one okay.
Yeah. So which one do you want to do more of, a little longer?
Oh, the one that's hard.
The one that's weaker?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you all see how you can take this and make it into like a therapeutic, and I think mine is my left one that's probably a little weaker. It is, yeah, the same thing.
Mine just wants to slide right out.
Right. And then my right one, because we're dominant on the right, so when we go to do painting the ceiling or something,
Right.
and then you're like, why do I hurt? Well, everything's connected by a sheet of fascia. Everything. We'll look at the anatomy a little bit more, but we get stronger on one side. Everything starts to pull on that side. It's all strong on this side. So you can look at things, and you'll get deeper into this Sunday at a mental, physical, spiritual level, all of those. Like, why is my right hip hurting me? Well, I was standing a lot, but why was I standing a lot? Why didn't you stop to take a break? Duh. You know, what are you trying? So you can look at things in so many ways, or what am I afraid of? What am I stressed about? I have that. So just, I'll be realistic, running a business, when I have to let somebody go because they're not working out, maybe their behavior or negativity or something, and I start freaking out and getting nervous that I'm gonna have to work extra now, and I don't wanna let them go. But at the same time, it's not fair to the rest of my team, letting somebody who's, so lots of plays, but that's when I sit down and do that. Okay, Kathleen, let's get real here. And that's what this is all about, being awake. And there's actually a story about Buddha. I think Jack Kornfield talks about it in his interview that I posted. He's walking down the street and everybody asking, wow, he looks so good. Are you a sage? Are you a magician? What are you? Are you human? No, I'm awake. I'm awake. And you know, it does make a difference.
She did.
I did one.
Oh, you did one here. That's right.
I'm sure you did too, Amy.
Yeah.
Here's that.
I need extra practice.
Good point.
Especially saying those words, Mike.
Yes.
And I know we have to break for dinner at some point. I'll forget. Sorry. Let me know when you're hungry.
I have Virabhadrasana.
Yes. Virabhadrasana. Is it?
It's a warrior 3.
Oh, Warrior 3. This is my favorite. I know we shouldn't have favorites, but I like this one because it's such a hip strengthener. And I love doing this one. I love bringing yoga everywhere because not everybody, I don't have time to do a 90-minute practice. You know, that's why we go to class. So you can bring it out wherever you are. And this one I love because you can take it to the park or when you're walking your dog. So Virabhadrasana 3, does anybody remember which one this one is? So this was 2, this was 1, and then there was
3.
yes, yeah. So you start from a standing pose, yeah. So you would say step to the front of your mat or wherever, because you're just going to balance here. So you could do from here, hands on your hips. A good way to start is, let's say we're going to balance on our left leg first. So what I would do is just step your right foot back behind you, just start here. So you've got your hands on your hips just to start out with, because this is a good way to just show hips square to the front of the room. Now, what are some cues to strengthen this leg we're about to stand on?
Quads, maybe?
Engage your quads,
Right.
yeah. And remember the base, the feet. You need a wide base.
Rounded feet. Spread
Yeah,
the
so
toes.
spread the bones on those feet, spread the toes. Big toe, pinky toe. Because when you sway to the left, the pinky toe is going to kick in. You sway to the right, the big toe. Now, start to lift the back leg up off the floor. You could just start here and find your drishti and breathe. You want to just remind everybody to breathe. So if you wanted to come into the full pose, you keep bringing the back leg higher, 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 and the toes can point down, the heel to the back of the room, but then squaring the hips again, because the right hip's going to want to come higher. That's in half moon. And then the hands can fly out, they can go to your sides. Hardest is going to be forward. And warrior 3. You can see how it's strengthening the glutes. Because what's the issue as we get older? Balance, falling, once you start falling. So, but it also mentally, you can't think of that shopping list or who said what when you're in this pose. So it's really grounding, and it's such a good, strong pose. So you can do this anywhere. You can actually do it in line, Publix, and just play with it.
Nobody will notice.
Not the full thing, but what I do is I do little trees,
Trees, yeah.
mini trees, or you can just do a little, like this. I'll squeeze my right butt or something, but just to play with it. But when I'm out at the park, I love to hang on to something or a tree, get into it, and then let go. And then I bring that into my practice when I'm out. And then what's really common is watching the bent knee. Well, see how it wants to give way? And you can even use that, let's say you're doing a practice on non-stealing, or, that knee is stealing from the practice. So that's something you want to look for, is that the knee's going to want to bend, your standing knee. So
But you don't want to lock it either, right?
no.
Right, so it's
you,
slightly bent.
Yeah, there's like, you could use micro bend. Keep soft. You see, yeah. And then you might not even want to get into the whole balancing of the hips yet, just get them balanced first. You'll see, because this is a pose, it's challenging. I remember the first time, not the first time I was teaching it, but my mom used to come to my yoga classes, and she fell like 3 mats over onto somebody else, and we were doing this pose. So what I learned is wall. If you're not, you could say it in a way that if you feel like you need the wall, let's go ahead and step to the wall. And we have a teacher here who's really good at teaching beginners, and she makes everybody feel good. Like, it's not about the pose, just the wall's right there, and that's reassuring. So let's just balance out the other side. And this is the problem when you're teaching and demonstrating, is you've got to do both sides, or you're going to be like, I don't know what I did. My hip really hurts. It was those 5 lunges you did. So let's balance on the right leg. So you could start hands on the hips. And there was a teacher that came once, and he was doing arms like this. I thought that was fun. And he had a little mudra going. That's one like this. Whatever's comfortable. The main thing here is that you're safe and not going to fall on somebody next to you. So you can keep it creative where you want your hands. And breathe. And soften. There's like that mix of effort and ease as well. Can you stay breathing? So warrior 3, is this helping? Is it coming back?
Yeah.
What's
When
happening
you
on
warrior
that?
3, should you keep your drishti forward? or
Drishti's going to be down because
Go down.
look,
Yeah, that's what I
you
felt.
see what I mean? Yeah. And the same with these poses when you're on your hands and knees. Balance. This isn't in our book, but this is a really good therapeutic pose. I've heard it called bird dog. So there are different names. And in this one, I'm using the top of this foot for balance and using my hands for balance. These are like little things like the average Joe doesn't think about, using your hands and your feet for strength. So just reviewing all these. Is this helping?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's helping a lot.
Good.
So just giving the little cues, just enough cues, like that.
Yeah.
Is warrior 3, would that be considered sort of a pinnacle pose, like if you were taking class through because of the
Yes.
amount of balance?
Oh yeah. I think warrior 3,
Yeah.
the balancing.
Right.
Yeah, it's a tough pose. It's a really tough pose, but definitely a pinnacle pose. It's such a good strengthener. And but I will say that there was somebody I had come teach anatomy before. He went more about the therapeutics of it. Balance poses, balance poses, balance poses. They're so good for us. in so many levels. So when I'm teaching a class, I think of strengthening. I want to strengthen the hips. I want to strengthen the back. I want to strengthen the core. I want to strengthen the feet and the ankles. And the beauty of yoga is it does tie a lot of this in. What I found is it doesn't have a lot of core. You will do boat pose, but I borrowed from Pilates or from just other yoga videos. I'll Google core exercises to get just to broaden it. Yoga, it's been 2,000 years, so a lot's happened, and we're also in Western bodies sitting at computers a lot. When they started it in India, it was only men. Women weren't allowed to do it. And you see young girls going to India now. This is not, you don't wear tight pants, you don't show your shoulders, you toe rings are, no. Those are for certain things. So it's come a long way. It's very different. Very different. But we have to adapt and focus on what our bodies need here, and maybe even meditation.
Warrior two.
Ah!
Oh wait, what did we just say?
Virabhadrasana.
It's different to say it than
It
to read
Yeah,
it.
Virabhadrasana. Virabhadrasana, the warrior.
Okay.
So the things, I know we've done warrior two already, but cultivating that calmness and being strong but calm, which is what we're doing in our meditations. I'm not watching the time. If we need how are we doing? It's 7:30. Do you want to take a little break? A little dinner break, or you want to keep
I
going?
don't bring any snacks on.
I'm not. I keep going. Okay, so just tell me, like, stop. Can I go to the bathroom? Or okay, so we'll keep going through these because there are a lot of poses that you've done. A lot of this. These are all the standing poses.
I know, I'm kind of getting overwhelmed with all the poses, like, 'cause
Don't
I know I
worry.
don't know them all, and I'm like, which ones should I look at? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm just like, oh, forget it.
We're doing the main ones. We're doing the main ones. Yeah. So don't worry, and there's no quit. Don't
Yeah.
You're just enriching. Strengthening your knowledge. So
Okay.
we'll just keep. And I'll. This is good for me to see where you're at and what I can ask you to maybe do to focus on.
Okay.
And definitely your own self. You are your own laboratory. So what you need to strengthen, if you feel you want to strengthen more, maybe it's you got to find the yin and yang, the balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like going to a variety of
Yes,
poses.
keep going to variety. What have you got?
Triangle.
Oh, triangle.
And I think this might be extended triangle. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's Utthita Trikonasana.
Trikonasana. Do you remember? So asana we know is the pose. Tree. Try. 3. Trikonasana. And Utthita is extended. I don't use a lot of Sanskrit when I teach. I think I overdid it once when I was subbing because Diana was in there, so I was doing a little extra to help her out. But you might say it. It might just come out. It depends on your group, or it might be interesting for them. So let's. What would be a good way to start in triangle? So mountain pose is one good way to start a pose, but also just here. Or if you're in it's usually step your right foot back and take a wide stance. So we can all face different ways for now because we're just playing. But if you were teaching, you'd want them all to be facing one way. So let's just yell out how you would get into this pose. You could do.
So you extend your arms out.
And then let's start with the right foot.
Oh, okay. And you're gonna lean. No,
Turn
wait,
your
no, you
right-
gotta
turn your right foot.
Correct. Yeah. So this is a heel alignment. Or the heel. You kind of see that? And then the back foot's a bit kind of parallel. So the legs are straight. And then you could use the same things we were doing, big toe, pinky toe, lift up through the pelvic floor, hug the thighs in, so you get nice and tall. And then you can lean and reach.
Yeah, reach.
That's
over your
one
right
way.
foot.
So this is the way I teach it over time. I'll use a block. You can even hold that block. Or go ahead and just hinge down and let your fingertips touch somewhere on your leg, lightly, so your legs are doing all the work. then you could gently slide down till you find your edge. And the palm is facing away from you with that top hand. And the arms are aligned. And then turn your heart up to the sky. And open that top hip. Can you feel that when you turn your heart up to the sky? Another thing I could do is hold your hands steady while you twist up to the sky.
This would take a micro bend in your knee.
Yeah.
Just a micro bend, 'cause
Right, and what usually you're gonna see is a lot of bent knees. So you might want to cue that.
So you want them to straighten it and not go as far down.
But not,
Right.
not.
And here is what you're gonna mostly see. So why would people be limited in how far they can go?
Just tight.
Tight?
hips.
Mhm. Their bones maybe are different. We all have different bones set up, but also the myofascial tissue could be side tight here. Usually what you see, especially with beginners and older groups, is like trying to, I'll not use that. This is what I see a lot of. It doesn't look comfortable. But if you have them, what about here? Like that, even? As long as they're not pressing on their knee, so they're straight.
Because the open chest is what you're
Open
looking for,
chest.
not the. kind of-
Right, right. Another thing I could do is on a chair to help with that, or a table. But you see that, or even if you're, especially,
Stand up.
what if somebody had had a double mastectomy? And but you want to open this up. So what about even, doesn't that look nicer? But I'm not pressing anywhere. And then I could eventually, as I start to get more limber in my low back or my lumbar, I could start to come down a little bit more. Now what if I had arthritis in my neck and it hurt to look up? Don't look up.
Yeah.
Look down. Or, so these are things that when the Indians started this in India with 14-year-old boys, they didn't have the arthritis in the neck. We're teaching a lot of older people with surgeries, and just getting them comfortable. But you see the difference of this to, because what the ego's going to want to do is touch the floor and then go like this. So already I'm straining my back. It's just really uncomfortable. You want to keep the spine straight and long. Does that make sense? There's a cue that I've heard, oh, don't say that anymore. And as if you're between two panes of glass. I don't know that works either, but you see with like that, but not everybody can. You might have a little bit of somebody. So what if somebody, do you remember what this is called? When you're too rounded as opposed to too much this? Kyphosis. Mm-hmm. So this is kyphosis. So let's just imagine somebody with kyphosis, maybe not as wide as a stance, maybe just hand on the thigh, and we just, might look like that. That's fine.
You want to encourage the opening of the
The
chest
opening.
and the arm as far as you could go. So
Right.
even if you can't get the arm all the way up, you still want to
Right.
open the chest.
And if maybe they can't lift their arm, maybe it's
Right.
here.
Right.
That's
But it's the
okay.
opening of the chest.
Yeah, just something like that. And the strengthening of the feet and the ankles, and it's still, kind of balancing there as well. Yeah. So triangle pose, and then revolve triangle pose. We'll keep going through these. This is like review. These are my charades.
Standing intense spread leg.
Is it pras? You're gonna learn this one Sunday with Stephanie. Prasarita.
Prasarita.
It's one that it's a name that I butcher.
Prasarita.
Prasarita is the
So,
pose name,
Yeah.
not the Sanskrit name.
so it's basically, you haven't done this one, but it's a wide leg, forward fold. And you're gonna do this one with Stephanie on Sunday.
Stephanie needed snacks. I'm just the loudest mouth, so I'm like, no.
Yeah.
It's quieter than me.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be my first choice of language to use.
Yeah, so I don't wanna, steal the thunder from Stephanie, cause she's gonna teach it Sunday, but you've probably done this a lot in a lot of classes, it's a wide leg. I'm not gonna get too bogged down in it, but similar components with the wide feet, hinging at the hip, forward fold.
That's a whole lot more
Will you
complicated than just
say,
a foot.
will you just say it, can you say it one time?
Yeah, so
Close name?
the press RYT200.
Yeah.
Is that it?
And I'm probably not saying it, she's done more
We're all gonna
study
come
in it.
down Sunday and say it wrong.
Right, and I've got that, cause I've got a southern,
But there's an uttasana in there too, so.
standing intense spread leg, press RYT200, Padottanasana. That's,
Is that the extended, oh, that's the toe
to
underneath?
stretch out.
Is
Yeah,
that-
so
oh, it's the toe. No.
this is one where you can take your big toes.
Yeah, oh, that's because
You
that's.
can take your fingertips to your big toes like we did to the standing. It's not with a beginner group or a gentle yoga group, that's not something I would instruct a lot because not everybody could do it, but it's where you could go. So if you were to take your two fingers, your peace fingers, and wrap them around your big toes, what it can do, and it does feel nice, is you can create traction. You see how my elbows are bent? And I can do something like that, you can do something like this, you can do something like this, you can do like that. So this is a good pose you'll come back to a lot because you see how a lot of the poses are like this, they're like this, and you come back here, oh, let's take a stretch. And you might do that 3 or 4 times in a class. That's a really common pose. But I was gonna have Stephanie break it down Sunday, but it got into my little list. I thought I went through them of just the ones, but one snuck in there. Let's do one more round and then we'll take a little sneaky snack break or breather.
Half moon,
Mhm.
Ardha Chandrasana.
Uh-huh, and it's Ardha, like an H, Ardha,
Ardha
Chandrasana.
Chandrasana.
Uh-huh, and this is a really fun pose. It's another, like a pinnacle pose.
Ardha Chandrasana.
And you did this one with Laura. You can go into it many ways. I'll just show quickly different ways you can go into it. So you could go from here to there. You could go from something like this to there. I'm just gonna speed it up and then we'll go through them all. You can go from triangle, this would be more advanced, to there. All different ways. So let's say we're just doing, let's do it, out of those 3, does one resonate with how you want to go into it?
From triangle. You went from warrior 3 to?
From triangle, you can go from warrior 3.
I thought that's.
You can go from
Yeah.
warrior 3,
That would be.
or
really
you can
big.
just do from a forward fold.
From forward.
So when we get into sequencing, the sky's the limit, but you kind of can see, which poses can go into it.
I think the easier would be from warrior 3 because if
Yeah,
you're,
and-
you're already a forward as
Yeah.
opposed to a forward fold, which you have to then move yourself.
More
up.
challenging would be from triangle,
Yeah.
I would think. You could even do it from, do you remember this pose? Side,
Angle.
like a side angle stretch, Parsvo Konasana, duh, duh. So different ways
Right.
to play with it. Now, this is an advanced pose, it's pretty hard to teach. So I have one of my students who's teaching a power yoga came out and she said they all fell down when I was teaching the half moon pose, and I showed her how you could do it at the wall. And that made a difference, or from this, so maybe you could go here, then maybe you could go here. Then maybe you could try to open the toes. So remember the back foot opens up, then maybe you could go here, and this helps strengthen the piriformis. And then maybe you could go here. So it's nice to do that. Maybe you could go here, and then stay there, Christina. If you're using the wall and you want to use the piriformis strengthener, I could hold her foot there, and she could push into my hand.
Wow.
Really push harder.
I feel that.
You feel that? Yeah. So this is really neat.
She's barely pressing.
I'm not, I'm just touching it.
Yeah.
Or I could just say, for extra credit, flare that pinky toe.
wearing it all.
You just kind of like,
There's one that does.
like you're holding a teacup. So you see how that makes a difference? So this takes a while to build up, to strengthen up to this pose. But you can encourage your students by starting at the wall and see where they are, and then try it. Now let's try it from the mat. Let's incorporate everything we just did at the wall and do it at the mat. Yeah.
I just have to do the other side, but I'm putting my face.
So she could be a little closer to the wall. So your right butt cheek could be resting on the wall.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And
It's a big.
how's that one? Good. And you feel with that pinky, so in that resistance, see, yeah, you see how that changed it.
Yeah.
And she's externally rotating and working all these hip muscles that are externally rotating that hip and strengthening them. And those are tiny, tiny little muscles in there. So this is a very therapeutic, they're all very therapeutic. It's just how you gotta read your group, and sometimes you're gonna have a big swing on what they can do and their limitations, so it's nice to have wall space. And I did a lot of beach yoga for a while, and then I was like, oh, the sun and skin cancer. But what I missed was the wall and blocks, and because they are helpful, and we wanna make people feel good about it. Not walk out, and I've had so many people, my husband was one of them, and he said, I tried yoga in London and I hated it. I was just, because he was so humiliated because he couldn't do it, it was too hard. It just depends on your group and what you're doing, or maybe you have a group that really is athletic and they want that. So it depends. So is anybody hungry? You want to take a little break, or? Let's take a little 10-minute break and just breathe and have a snack, use the restroom, and then we'll restart again.
Shavasana.
This is a really hard one to pronounce.
Shavasana.
But it's Shva.
Shavanasana.
Shavana. Shavan.
Shvanasana.
Correct, yeah. So-
Shvanasana. Easy to say.
It's a tough one. Yeah, yeah. There's, I know I'm tongue twisted.
I wonder if a whiteboard wouldn't help when Stephanie's teaching us, breaking down the word and giving us the visual.
I think that's a good idea, visual would be a
Yeah,
good idea.
yeah.
Just the sound and the visual, I
Yeah.
have more of a visual.
Yeah. 'cause
Yeah.
I'm
you're
not hearing it, I don't hear it, I
this
can't see
means
it
speed.
pronounced.
And they have it broken down in a little, in your books as well.
Honor
Gosh, we
means
need to
down,
break our
down.
books.
Mukha is face.
Uh-huh,
Shvana is dog.
uh-huh, yeah.
Shauna, there's dog.
Okay. No, Shvana.
What?
Not Shana. Shvana.
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 And I have them broken down on the pieces of paper to help with the pronunciation as well. Most commonly, you're gonna come to this pose quite a bit. Let's start from hands and knees. Because usually, here's how you start. You start your class centering, laying down, getting breathing, connected, then you do some stretches, then you roll over, and you come on your hands and knees, you do some cat-cow, maybe do some balancing, and then a down dog. Because that down dog is gonna help you get them to stand up.
Right.
You can tell I've been doing this a long time. So what are some cues just coming on your hands and knees first? Tabletop, yes. And let's go over some cues. While we're here, let me go ahead and bring you through a common, so aligning the wrists
And the shoulders.
under the shoulders or shoulders over wrists.
Knees under.
Another one too you want to think about is you don't want to be too squished up like this, but maybe lengthened out. And also hips over the knees. So just starting out, what about the fingers?
Spread the fingers.
Uh-huh. And then if we're going to do a balance pose on our hands and knees, the tops of the feet. 10 toenails pressing down. Can you see that balance? Mm-hmm. So if you're going to come into down dog, usually you want them to either bring their hands forward or knees back. And one way you could measure your down dog is from plank. But usually you just bring your hands forward and then tuck your toes and come into down dog. What if we were to tuck the toes and come into a plank? And strong core here. Strong core, shoulders over your wrists. And you can even imagine, I like thinking a candle underneath your belly button. Pull that belly button in and out. And then now lift your hips up. So maybe your heels don't go all the way to the floor, but you feel how lengthened you are in your side body. So you can, that's one way to measure. And also, let's come down to your knees for a moment. I loved it. Do you all remember James that used to teach here?
I never cared.
No.
Yeah, oh, he was a sweetie. I liked how he kind of had like a focus each class, and he did this like, see the L shape with the index and the thumb? But everybody's shoulders are gonna be different. Stephanie and I, when we first taught this, we would say rotate your shoulders externally like you're opening 2 jars of peanut butter. But then what happened, there were a few students that were like overachieving, really doing that, and then they came back the next week, they're like, my thumb hurts. Because they were just overdoing trying to open those peanut butter jars, so we learned that maybe that wasn't a good. But you see how, so the shoulders gently kind of roll out, if that makes sense. So you could even show students that. But also you see the shoulders. Can you see how they move? That. So getting that feeling. Yeah. But can you keep your hands like that and do that? Let's try it again. So come on your hands and knees, and so you could either, I say, I know it sounds kind of like kindergarten, take a paw print forward. And then you see the L shape, and then relax your shoulders. You can already bring the shoulders onto your back, then tuck your toes, lift your hips up, lengthen in your side body. You could press your chest back towards your knees is one way. What we don't want to do is dip real deep in the back and your upper back, because that's going to crunch your spine. So you want to keep a nice straight spine and lengthen. So I'm going to walk around and show how, so your heels reach back towards the mat, but they might not touch. Now here in down dog, what if you were to bend your knees? Let's bend your knees a little bit. Now roll your inner thighs, internally rotate them in, and then spreading your sit bones, now reach your heels back again. Did you notice a little difference there? What are we stretching here? Hamstrings, yes. And then when we stretch the hamstrings, do you remember what they attach to? The ischial tuberosity, those are your sitting bones. And when we loosen these hamstrings, then it's going to give the back more space, so we're stretching the back. We're also stretching the shoulders, so you get a big, and usually my neck gets a little release from this as well. And then from here, if you were going to bring your students to standing, you'd either do A or B, go into like a child's pose, or bring them into standing. So you could walk your fingertips back to your toes like Diana's doing, or you could walk your toes up to your feet. And this can be sometimes in a gentle yoga or beginner class.
Is that walking your hands back to your feet? Would you not do that with maybe some people that weren't very skilled, very balanced, very...
Right. So
that's harder.
Yeah.
They would have bent their,
If,
you would have to bend your knees a lot
the
more.
step before, or somebody new that maybe has trouble with balance, is I might have a chair close by. Or what I might say is, if you need to come to your knees first and use the blocks to step up. Or let's look at all the different variations. So let's say they're here. I would say bend the knees, maybe even use blocks, but really bend the knees to come back. Same thing if they're going to walk forward, bend the knees so they're not straining too much. And then these blocks are on hand. I'm not a big roller upper like that, because forward folds are pretty dangerous if you have osteoporosis and some issues there. It feels really good to round like that and do that if you have a healthy spine. If you have a back injury, it's good to come up that way with a straight spine, just to play safe. I give the option. If you don't have a back injury, you can roll up if you want. or come up with a straight spine. But you have to use a lot of strength in your legs and core to come back up. So let's take an anatomy shift to the core. So yoga anatomy, lower limbs, we did that. So page 332 in your, I'm just going to do a quick review, the psoas, because that is such an important muscle, the psoas. The psoas lifts, does anybody remember from Saturday Night Live? This is, I'm filming it. Sally O'Malley. And she says, I'm 50 and I can kick.
50 years old.
Yeah, and I can kick. But the psoas lifts. But also the psoas is, let's see, kind of more of your second to third chakra. So you can imagine, especially young ladies who've had sexual trauma, maybe hold a lot, or if you're just stressed in general, and your teeth and your shoulders are tight, and then you don't even realize you're squeezing, and this is active. We hold memories in our tissues and our muscles, but also when we sit a lot, that gets shortened and tight. When we press on the gas pedal, it gets shortened and tight. So what would you say also is the biggest issue that people complain about pain in their body in our country?
Their lower back.
Yeah, and back surgeries, low back, low back. So if that psoas is really tight, it could really pull on that low back, and that's on page 3. If you want to just kind of get comfortable with saying psoas, remember the psoas. Page 332 was the psoas, just to remember. And that brings me to where the psoas originates. Where does it start? Can you see where it starts? In the lumbar, in the low back. In the